When I talk to folks about breakups, one point almost always comes up. One or both parties in most breakups seem unable or unwilling to examine themselves to find room to improve. I don't know what it is with our stubborn monkey brains that makes this so hard, but it seems like a near universal struggle. And there isn't a piece of art out there that more aptly and more maturely addresses the need for self-reflection than Jason Robert Brown's musical, The Last 5 Years.
Will you share your life with me for the next 10 minutes? For the next 10 minutes? We can handle that.
Part 1. The Basics. The Last 5 Years is the type of musical that, if you're a normal person, you've probably never heard of. But if you're a theater kid, you've definitely sung at every drunk karaoke night. This is an indisputable constant. You literally cannot prove me wrong. And the reason most people have probably never heard of it is the same reason theater people love it. It's an intimate, uncomfortable show, a collection of solos and duets performed by only 2 actors, which is the type of show to absolutely bomb on Broadway. I mean, there isn't a single founding father in this show. It wouldn't last a month. But it weaves a tragic tale of love lost in such a unique, lively way that anyone lucky enough to see it live falls in love with it. For those unfamiliar with it, let me explain the basics. The Last 5 Years stars Jamie and Cathy, with a C apparently. The two meet as young, hopeful artists in New York and immediately fall in LOUVE. As their relationship progresses, issues arise, but they're either too in love to notice or too scared to talk about them. As those issues fester, they eventually become emotional wounds. Cathy feels unappreciated and Jamie feels trapped, neither really being able to work it out. At the end of the musical, Jamie moves out while Cathy's away, leaving only a note to let her know he wants a divorce. In the final song, Cathy belts to the starry sky about Jamie's cowardice and her broken heart. Well, actually, sorry, I misspoke. Cathy's belt at Stars song is actually the first song in the musical, and the one where Jamie leaves is the last song. Okay, look, what I'm about to say may sound complicated at first, but please stay with me. The Last 5 Years is structured around 2 timelines. Jamie's songs appear in chronological order, meaning the first song he sings is after their first date, and his last song is his despair as he moves out. But Cathy's songs are in reverse order, meaning the first song we hear her sing is of her heartbreak reading Jamie's note, and the last song she sings is on the night of their first date. Their paths go in these opposite directions with only one song in which they meet and sing together, the night Jamie proposes. It sounds like a weird structure, which I guess empirically it is, but the musical makes the story work remarkably well. Were the story told in proper order, it'd feel basic and overplayed, no different from several romance movies we've all probably seen before. But having their paths go in opposite directions allows for a duplicitous look at this type of slowly falling apart relationship story we're all so used to. The songs where they're happy are preceded and followed up by their darkest moments together. So instead of basking in the early stages of their romance, we're able to see the cracks in the relationship and how they were doomed to fail. Like in the song Moving Too Fast. Jamie's excited about the money he's making from writing and about moving in with Cathy. But because of the framing of the musical, our reaction to his glee is way different. In the song that precedes Moving Too Fast, Cathy accuses Jamie of cheating on her, and she ends the song crying. Then cut to this motherfucker yucking it up, the asshole. The framing allows for the content of the song to be emotionally complex. Every single lyric is fed through a filter of mixed emotions, of elation at their love at the same time of despair knowing where it ends. It's brilliant storytelling, the type of experiment with how an audience interacts with time that we rarely get to see. But it's not just an interesting concept. The structure of the musical also hammers home its core message. Part 2. The need for self-reflection. Jamie and Cathy are flawed. They are too emotional, walking around with the passion dial cranked up to 11 at all times. They're both too goal-oriented, defining their worth by their accomplishments and their relationship to others. They're both bad listeners, hot-headed, self-absorbed, and they both want to drive the relationship in their direction. But more than anything, the bond that defines these two is that they lack self-reflection. Every mistake they make in their relationship is worsened or caused by an inability to reflect on their flaws and their past. And that issue is present from the first moment they meet. Jamie and Cathy are initially attracted to each other, not really because of anything about each other, but because both are different from their exes. Jamie's first song is about how it literally doesn't matter what Cathy's like. If she drives an RV, or has been to Japan, or if she once was a man, it's all right with him. Progressive king shit, by the way. It's all fine so long as she's not Jewish. By the way, he's Jewish, so he's just trying to find someone outside the women his parents normally set him up with. He's not racist, I swear. And in Cathy's song, I Can Do Better, she says Jamie's more stable than her exes, so he doesn't have to change a thing, which is about as low as a bar can get, right? And to be clear, their love becomes real. They do legitimately fall for each other, but their inability to look inward and listen to the things they're singing causes them to start dating for some kinda sus reasons. How much good do you really expect to come from a relationship where you're just glad she's not Jewish? Which again is not a racist thing. In their early meetings, we also see an inability to look at the flaws of their past relationships. Cathy talks about how her last boyfriend left unannounced one day, but she doesn't reflect on why her boyfriend, with some well-placed tattoos, left her. He could have just been a dick, but it's likely his departure had to do with some of the same character flaws that eventually drive Jamie away. Cathy mentions that as soon as she started to think she might be falling for this guy, he ran away. But it's entirely possible she either told him about this inclination in a way that struck him as too clingy and he wanted to leave, or that her actions just started to reflect that inclination in a way that made him feel strained and want to leave. But because Cathy doesn't stop to consider what she may have done wrong in that relationship, she never self-corrects. And maybe Jamie's relationships with the likes of Heather Greenblatt fell apart for the same reasons his marriage with Cathy fails. Maybe he was distant or cheated on all of them, who knows? He never self-reflects, so he too is unable to learn from past mistakes. Once they start dating, it's clear things are happening too fast. Their hot-headed passion has them speed running through the dating sim, and Jamie can see this, but he doesn't have the fortitude to reflect on the situation or do anything about it. He literally belts the line,
"I got a singular impression, things are moving too fast."
So he can feel in his gut that shit's happening too quickly, but because he lacks self-reflection, he sprints into all of it, despite reservations. As their relationship gets underway, it's clear Cathy's unhappy being less than successful in theater, while Jamie is full of himself. Cathy's in the ensemble for what's portrayed as a dinky show in Ohio, while Jamie's book is selling like hotcakes. Because of how they both define themselves by their achievements, the success divide immediately causes a tear in the marriage. Cathy's jealousy subconsciously gets the better of her, and Jamie gets kind of rude when they talk about it. They discuss this disconnect from time to time, but it clearly never changes anything, because neither is willing to acknowledge their part in it. And after a few years of not changing much in the relationship, the flaws start to worsen. As Jamie gets more successful and distant, Cathy's controlling side comes out, creating a cycle where he wants space and she sees the desire for space as an attack. This is the result of a long-standing flaw in their relationship that, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, comes from their lack of self-reflection. Cathy is hella codependent. When she asks Jamie to move in with her, she literally says,
"I want you and nothing but you, miles and piles of you."
Which is such an obvious, clingy red flag, even Mozart could see it. wait, he was deaf, fuck. And in the early days, Jamie enabled this, pouring himself into Cathy. But this clinginess is one of the singular impressions Jamie felt worried about. As when he gets more successful, she gets really needy in an unhealthy way. Sadly, neither sees the writing on the wall. No teary-eyed ballad they sing helps them realize this cycle they're perpetuating. And this is not a defense of his shitty actions, but the rift between them and the drama that they create with each other drives Jamie to cheat on Cathy with some lady? I don't know, could be a guy or a non-binary person. Point is, Jamie's a dirty, rotten cheater. And from what we can gather happens after the affair, no amount of therapy or talking it out can remedy the relationship for Jamie. He feels too strained, feels he doesn't have a corner of himself he's allowed to have that she won't overtake, and feels she's asking him to save her in a way he can't manage. So one night, he just leaves. What really bums me out here, the real tragedy of the way their relationship ends, is the fact that they can't self-reflect to literally save their marriage, but they're great at pointing out each other's flaws. Jamie's able to point out Cathy's codependence, but is unable to see how he enabled it early on, or how his being a distant jerk is worsening that tendency in her. Likewise, Cathy can point out Jamie's selfishness, but can't seem to see her own controlling side. When they talk about their problems, they use a lot of accusatory language, like a lot of yous or sarcastic we's instead of that many I's. Each could write a dissertation on what their spouse does that's wrong, but not only can they not see their own flaws, when their partner brings their flaws to their attention, they don't internalize them or do anything about it. The ultimate tragedy of the musical is that because Cathy and Jamie learn nothing from their flaws, both characters go off and feel like they're about to make the same mistakes again. As Cathy reads out the divorce note, she literally says,
Maybe there's somewhere a lesson to learn, but that wouldn't change the fact, and I still hurting.
like, oh my God, girl, how can you not hear yourself? She can sense there's a personal flaw she needs to correct going forward. Oh, but that wouldn't make her happy at this moment, so why bother? And her last lines of the musical are to tell Jamie, I will be waiting for you. And although, she's going in reverse order, the lyrics placed at the end imply she'll struggle to get over Jamie enough to learn and move on. And on Jamie's side, when he's laying in bed next to his lover, he repeats a line that he says to Cathy earlier in the musical.
Since I have to be in love with someone, maybe I could be in love with someone like you.
The original use of this line is one of many warning signs that he got with Cathy for the wrong reason, and its repetition suggests he's moving into this new relationship too quickly as well. And moreover, the repetition of this line suggests he hasn't learned anything from how quickly he got together with Cathy because he, wait for it, lacks self-reflection. All these signs from the end of their relationship suggest they're going to move on and put some other poor sap through their emotional baggage, which would be a strong motif on its own, but it's highlighted by the musical structure. We start on Cathy's end and end on Jamie's, with one expansive ballad in the middle where they sing together. Given how passionate these two are, the musical feels like two balls of energy hurtling toward each other, then slowly drifting apart. This feeling of kinetic motion is accented by one important detail. The musical motif that opens the show is what we hear in its final moments, the theme from I Could Never Rescue You. Bookending the musical like this gives it a sense of starting from the same place it ended. So not only in the lyrics do we see evidence that the characters will likely repeat their mistakes, but the structure of the musical itself literally tells us that Jamie and Cathy are about to pick up where they left off with some other poor soul, putting them through the same BS because they haven't taken a moment to reflect. Because of the structure and the emotional journey of the characters, The ending feels like a warning to the audience that you too could get caught up in this vicious, endless cycle of misery and broken hearts unless you break the chain by looking inward. It's a dramatized case study in the need for self-reflection, and its structural execution is mwah. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to toss me one of them likes and subscribe down below. Make sure to ring that little bell and set the notifications to all so you can know the exact nanosecond I release my next video. Special shout out to all my mature and capable of self-reflection patrons, like those whose names are currently on screen. On top of generously supporting me, patrons get access to exclusive and early content, like rough edits of every video and unreleased behind-the-scenes footage. So be sure to join me on Patreon if you want access to all those goodies. Make sure to share this video on whichever social medias you frequent. It really helps the channel out and I appreciate it. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter because I make a useful observation there at least once a week. Thanks much, and I'll see you next time.